don't have everything that happened, right? They actually don't have 5 years of missions in the TV show. I don't think they have 5 seasons.
There's only
So it could be,
3. Yeah.
right? So it could, all these things could still be canon.
This-
Fuck in the universe they belong.
All right. Hopefully this stays stable enough.
Well, good luck.
No, it's not even. Keeps dipping down to the red. It's not streaming right.
Maybe you need faster internet.
I have the fastest
The fastest known to man.
available to me at the current time. All right, fuck it. Let's just go with it.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to Corner Comics, your mostly weekly comic book reading club. My friends and I get together, we share a few issues with each other, and then we talk about those issues. Gentlemen, it's Sunday. We got 6 comics we're going to talk about today. How are you, and where can people find you on the interwebs?
I am feeling particularly paradisiac.
Man,
You
I
can
gotta look
find
that up.
me.
Yeah, I got to look that up too.
Can you spell that for me, please?
Sure. PARADISAIC.
All right.
All right. So you can find me at EmmanuelTheStory.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at EM_MAN_YOU_EL. Lastly, cornercomics.net.
Well, it's kind of hard to beat that since I ain't got a new word. So I'm going to say that I am tremendously energetic yet stoic simultaneously. And my name is Walrus Prime. You can find me on Twitter at Walrus. That's at WALLRUSS. You can also find me at blacksuperherofan.com. And you can also find me here on cornercomics.net. And I got to get to writing some more articles for the site, so I got to get to work on that. But hope to hear from you. Feel free to step in and pop a word.
Likewise. Yeah, I should probably write some more. I have a few ideas for different articles that we could post on the site, but we'll get to that sooner or later. So we got 6 books this week. I'm coming with 2 old books. I got Amazing Adventures number 12 from 1970. This is the story of Beast, how he becomes the Beast that we know now. And Weird Science number 6. This is from 1951. This is EC Comics, and this is an anthology book. Russ, which 2 do you have?
Let's see. This week I brought Hellblazer, Rise and Fall, number 2. This is from DC's Black Label, which means there can be questionable and racy material. It came out 2020. And I brought a throwback, New Warriors, number 1 from 1990. And I'll sort of let that speak for itself. Manuel, what do you have?
Nice. I have brought to you an Image comic, Sex Criminals, issue number 1. And this series started in 2013, ended late last year in October 2020. And the second book I brought to you is Star Trek versus Transformers. This is an IDW book, and they are very famous for taking 2 not franchises, but 2 groups of happiness and joy that you know and love and combining them. This being Star Trek and this being Transformers.
It's IDW should be nicknamed Peanut Butter and Jelly.
Right?
Word. Word.
All right, so let's jump right into it. The first book that I have today is Amazing Adventures, featuring the Beast, one Avenger, dead on arrival. I picked this because I didn't realize that the story of how Beast became the bestial character that we sort of know him as today was effectively a villain story. He is the villain in this book, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And it's not another Beast. It's not a different Hank McCoy. They started off with the X-Men and talk about how he leaves the X-Men to go join this think tank and do his science, and sort of loses his way. So what did you guys think about this book?
You
I
or
like the
me?
similarities between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. How he's this great thinker, this great orator as well. Like his vocabulary is amazing. His thought process is great, but then he injects himself, and it's of his own hand as well. He turns himself into the beast and enhances his mutant ability by his own hand, and turns him into a somewhat feral creature and a villain of sorts. This is interesting. I really don't have any interest in Beast other than him stepping outside of who he is, because who he is in the comics is just boring. It's boring and bland. Like, yes, I am Beast and I do the right thing and I'm furry. But to have
And I'm
him
smart.
be feral and vicious, yes, and insanely witty and smart. Well, not necessarily witty, but insanely intelligent. This this intrigued me. If they were to keep him kind of just on the outskirts of sanity, even on the outskirts of his nobility, just always teetering that line, that would make him a more compelling character. That's why this book is more enjoyable for me than his regular titles. So I like this. This is good.
Okay, so tell me if you've heard this story before.
Okay.
Uh, an intelligent person goes through, or a talented person goes through some tragic thing which deforms him forever and makes the world fear him. That he was going to have to, and always will think of himself as a monster. Does that sound like anybody you know? Does that sound like Bruce Banner? Does that sound like Ben Grimm?
Yeah.
Now we have a mutant version of the same. This, to me, is that same story,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is some unique thing because the mutant version. There's some unique things, and actually, when you look at how that has been rewritten, he was actually trying to cure himself from being a mutant.
Yeah.
It just went the other way because his body is mutation based. So when he tried to cure himself, his body was like, no, it went worse into the mutation to protect itself, and then he became the furry bundling bounce of joy. One thing that didn't survive is that he became stupider as the beast. That was something that was sort of the premise of this book and didn't actually happen going forward. He still kept this. He
Yeah.
still was a tragic, like him, Bruce Banner, and Ben Grimm should all just cry together because the world just woe is me. The world misunderstands me, and I'm a monster, and they'll never know and understand the real me, and they won't leave me alone. Right? This is that same trope. It's just a mutant version of that. So I won't say this is especially original. It was interesting in that this is what made the beast that we know, right? Because so it is noteworthy in that this is the story that talks about him not being a regular looking person with big feet, right?
Right.
Because the original beast was a regular looking person who had big feet, that his toes were as good as his hands, and he could just, get a toe hold on anything the same way you can get a hand hold on something, right? Everything else is currently the same about him. And they've mutated him further in the comics, even to the point where he's taken a cat like appearance. But I don't find him to be especially interesting. Maybe because it's not original, right? I understand that this takes place in the, universe, but I could get this fix from the Thing
Yeah.
because he also has a team. I get this fix from the Hulk because the Hulk is roaming the earth trying to escape and is really smart. The only thing to me that makes this different is that he is a mutant, and there's some unique mutant aspects to his transformation and his place in that world. But and I don't know that he was the villain. I don't know that in this book. I feel like Iron Man might have been the villain and realized it in the last few panels. Right? I
Okay.
think that the Beast is the victim throughout this whole book. I don't see him as the villain here. I don't know that there is a specific villain unless you count the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants who get a panel or two in there, right?
Well,
I don't. Go ahead.
I guess I
Or
could
the woman that's
say
trying to.
as a counter to what you're saying is that good villains are written as sort of misunderstood or just characters that have a vastly different perspective. So to that end, I mean, Beast is kind of a villain in this book.
Okay. I don't feel like the Hulk is a villain until he actually does intently do villain things. I could say that Wolverine is a villain in that same respect, right?
Okay.
So I think that how the world, and this is the whole thing about these type of characters, right? How the world paints them is what you walk away with, right?
Yeah.
So you walk away with the Hulk as a villain, but you know if everybody leaves the Hulk alone, he doesn't mess with anybody, right? He only seems to activate when people do wrong and try to harm him, right? So I don't consider that a villain. The Thing, not a villain, even though he has gone crazy and broke stuff and a whole bunch of other things, you know what I mean? And fought even people he loved. Still not a villain. I think tragically, I think you can give him anti-villain or tragically or anti-hero
Right.
or a tragic victim. But I don't see them as a villain. I see it as the world sees them as a villain.
Okay.
Right. And he has to, it's like, and this is taking liberty, so excuse me. So it's like saying black people are villains because of their nature or their, you know what I mean, or their skin color or their strength or whatever it is, but they're not. They're human beings. And I feel like this is just another, calling them a villain is the same misunderstanding that, and maybe that was the intent, right? Like maybe the people who wrote this were high-minded enough to say, really, this person's not a villain, but the world will never let, even I remember in the live action Hulk, he must let the world think he's dead, because the world can't know what he's capable of because they won't allow him to live. They won't allow him to continue. So I say not a villain.
Okay.
But
The true villain in the story is the assistant,
Yep.
Mr. Hank McCoy's assistant, Linda Donaldson. That is the true villain. She's sneakily trying to take Hank out, and like she killed all of her predecessors. She's the true villain.
Yep, and she narrates her own villainy and everything here. So yeah, I agree. But anyway, I didn't feel like there was a whole lot original here. I feel like if you're a person that's a collector, if you feel like you want to know that story of how he became blue, this is the story, right? Or this one issue is part of that story. I feel like I needed to see the issue before that, but I don't know if that.
I don't know if it
that
exists. I think this is
Yeah.
a one shot for the most
might
part.
be.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a 20-cent book. It came out 100 years ago. The art shows this. It's very much art of its time, which is not to say that it is bad. It's just that that's how stuff was drawn back then, and it did that well enough. There's a limit of colors per panel, it seems. You can only have 5 colors on this panel. I don't care what colors you want, but you only get 5. There's a little bit of ridiculousness, like his spine is leaned over and he's going to wear a brace that's going to make his spine straight.
Yeah.
No, right? With some leather straps, but you have super strength. It was interesting that Beast is bulletproof. Does your memory feel like Beast is bulletproof?
No, I'm also
He's always dodging the bullets.
yeah, I'm shocked at how he beats the shit out of Iron Man too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember him being quite that strong.
Yeah, but this is the first time they did it, right? And so they hadn't really, nothing was canon yet, right? And later on, and because he's a mutant and mutation is in flux, some adjustments were probably made over time, and you could explain it away that way.
Okay.
Right? I didn't like the fact that, because you got to read everything here. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutant says, "Oh, remember those things that happened on these 2 pages? They were all in his mind. That didn't really happen in real life. Do you remember that part? Right? You guessed it, true believer. Pages 18 and 19 happen only in the Beast's mind and yours. Did you see that? You didn't.
No, missed it.
This is where the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and you can scroll up to it.
Yeah.
And if you look at the yellow thing at the bottom, the yellow box,
Yeah,
certain things in the story didn't happen. So not a villain, right? The whole I but Beast kills didn't actually happen, right? So again, I feel like that wasn't good writing and how they like if you missed that box, you missed a whole piece of the story.
I feel like Stanley used to do that shit a lot. Like he would let them do whatever they wanted in the art, and then he would come along and reframe the story with his writing.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So he's like, "Ah, that just didn't happen, right?"
Yeah. So anyway, I think this book is a maybe an interesting read if you're interested in finding out how this story. And like the Hulk was originally gray. The blue on the beast is not the blue you know and love in
Yeah.
the comics. It's a gray blue. But maybe that's only because they had a certain amount of colors. Who knows? But anyway, that's what I think of that.
All right. Any other final thoughts? All
None at
right.
all.
Moving on, my second issue is Weird Science number 6, 1951. This is an anthology story. There's 4 stories in here, I believe. One about a trip to Venus. One about a scientist that figures out how to make atoms more dense. One story about a guy that goes back in time to try and save the Titanic. And the final story is about a scientist that finds a cloning serum of sorts. Um, what did you guys think? I've brought Weird Science on the show before. Um, these are kind of, I feel like they're along the same lines as like Twilight Zone or things like that, but because it's in comic form, they
Mm.
have a little more liberty with some of the things they could do. Yeah, what are your guys' thoughts?
I want to say I am very much a fan of the anthology series, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, things like that. When it's in comic book form, it's a bit harder to digest. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the cinematic storytelling of it works better in the medium of television versus comics, but this was a bit harder to stomach.
Okay.
It was still enjoyable because I like the aspect of a story ending not so great. Like it's this repetitive theme of tragic tales.
Right.
So that's interesting, and I kind of expect that. The My favorite was actually the last one, the cloning. Every other story I kind of saw coming. This one I was hoping for, or I was expecting something else, and then this surprised me. The ending of the cloning when he cloned his wife and to all these little pieces and killed them. Like that was that was really surprising, and the fact that it took me by surprise, I enjoyed. The first story, the Venus story of all the scientists dying, well, not all, but most of the scientists dying on Venus, how they're so cavalier with it, that was comical. It was unintentionally funny how they just saw their friends die. It's like, oh, that's tragic. He did not deserve to go out that way. And then just go about their lives. Like that to me was kind of funny. Um, this was interesting, but again, the comic book medium with this type of story, it's not necessarily my cup of tea.
Okay.
All right. So here's my dealio with this. Um, I also like good sci-fi tales, right? Uh, uh, Especially things when you don't see coming, and this didn't always do that, right? Like the tale where he was saved by a mysterious stranger. I automatically knew it was him, right? There's just certain things that are just there, and the level of stupidity with the scientists who bring something back from another planet and don't keep it in a. But you're
Right.
a scientist and you know enough to get to a new planet and understand all these concepts. There's a lot of things that don't really work in these series,
Yeah.
right? I understand the emotional reason for the guy. You got to be careful of a really smart guy who can invent cloning. What happens if he gets mad at you? You know, that's just too much power in the hands of a regular human being. So I get that. what I felt that while these were relatively interesting, if I didn't read them, I don't feel like I would have missed anything, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Right? Like this type of book is for people who want more of this in this format, and it delivers. Right? It tells decent stories, and it squeezes them into the right. There's no wasted panels on any of these, right? There's no everything in there is just a concise amount. Like you got 6 pages to tell the story, you got 3 pages to tell the story, right? You can only use a maximum of 27 panels. That's it, and they do it, right? And sometimes they do it by putting a whole lot of word bubbles for you to read.
Yeah.
To squeeze it all in there. If this is something that interests you, they sort of give you a lot for your money because there's a few stories here, right? That each of them, especially considering the time, maybe everyone hadn't seen so many sci-fi tropes at this time in their life. They didn't exist. But for now, reading that is none of this is especially groundbreaking. None of this especially makes me think, so I don't feel like that. And it's not that this is a bad book. It's just that if I didn't read it, I don't know what I missed.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a whole bunch of, now, if there was about 20 of them for $1 in the crates, I'd get all of them and stack them, and then I'll read them that way, right?
Yeah.
Because in theory, they're less than they are on the cover price, which is already really small. But I can't recommend this to anyone.
Okay.
Because I can't say this is why you should read this book. Nothing happened in any of the stories, which were not terrible, that I could say, you need to read this. This is why. This is relevant. None of that really occurred. So I would have to give this a pass for that reason.
Okay. So I will tell you one of the reasons why I selected this book.
Okay.
When they're talking about the planet Venus, there's some dialogue about how the planet may not be rotating on its axis the same way that the Earth is. And then when they're flying over the planet, they're like, well, maybe in the twilight zone of the planet, in between, where the sun hits and where there's total darkness, there's probably a habitable area.
Yeah.
That was super interesting to me because just recently they've done models on planets because they've been constantly finding new exoplanets, planets that are in different solar systems. And one of the models that they did was to determine whether or not that was actually feasible. So it is, in fact, possible to have an area or a band on a planet that is in between if it doesn't rotate.
If it doesn't rotate.
Yeah, that could support life. So I thought that was super interesting, and that stuck out to me because I would say like 10, 20 years ago, if I had read this, probably would have been like, that's kind of bullshit. Like, they don't really know anything. But the fact that was in this book really sort of struck me as like, wow, that's the essence of science fiction, right? Eventually, some of this stuff becomes science fact type of deal. And yeah, it took me a few books of the weird science to try and find one that has 4 good stories. I feel like I love this kind of thing, but a lot of the issues, there's like one story that hits and like the other 3 sort of fall flat. This was the first book that I came across, other than the other one that I brought on, that has like 4 consistently decent stories.
I get that.
So
the second story with the strong man and the sciences definitely reminds me of an enhanced version of what you would read on the back of a comic book. Like, I was subtly waiting for them to sell me something that would get me buffed so that I can defend myself against a buff man putting sand in my woman's face.
right.
I was
It just seemed like
reminded.
a very long ad.
I was reminded of the heavy metal thing where Hanover Fist, Hanover, I've got an angle, and the guy, it sort of give me that feel of that story. If anyone ever watched the heavy metal original movie, it made me think about that. But in the end, they're all tragic. In
Yeah.
the end, who do you really root for? You know what I mean? Like part of the things that I like in comics is that I have someone I root for and care about. Like you've made me care about at least one person in this, and I want to see what happens to them. And even if they're villains, some villains I care about like that, right?
Right.
But none of
Doom.
these really gave me, like even the guy in that same story we're talking about, the guy who survived, he was milk toast through the whole thing. He had no personality. He had no, you know what I'm saying? He was just stating facts through the whole thing. Like, here's a fact, here's a fact, here's a fact, here's a fact, right? And but nothing up, but no passion. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And that, that was a problem for me.
Okay.
So again, it wasn't enough for me to care about him, and I wanted to be able to do that.
That's fair. All right. Moving on then.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay, my first book is Hellblazer: Rise and Fall, #2. This is DC's Black Label, which means cussing and sex and anything else that DC can't do in their normal books. And it has John Constantine, which does everything that can happen in DC's normal books. And then here you find, him possibly in bed with the devil. And I was like, there might be something here. So I leave it to you guys. What do you think?
Emmanuel.
I think John Constantine belongs on DC's Black Label. He should be a constant staple, like a permanent resident in the Black Label, simply because what he does, to borrow from Marvel, is not very nice. He's good at what he does. He's the best at what he does, but what he does is not very nice. This book, I really appreciated. It's gonna sound weird saying this, but the devil character in this. There's one scene in particular where he is, or a panel in particular, where he's talking to John Constantine about the horns or about his appearance. And he just does this very teenage girl thing, like sticks out his tongue and uh, bucks his eyes, like it's just very, I don't know, weird and zany kind of, but not like over the top. It's just that level of evil, but I'm not a slave to my evilness. I am who I am. I'm kind of suave with it, but make no mistake about it, I'm evil. Um, this book itself was interesting. It's not necessarily who done it, but it's who done it, but you gotta. There's a certain level of intelligence that John Constantine has to step up and accomplish, and he has to use Satan or the devil to accomplish his goal. And Satan actually needs Constantine for something to. This was this was interesting. I enjoyed this issue. I don't think I'd read a subsequent issue though. It's not enough to captivate my attention to read another one, but I did enjoy reading this. If later down the road, one of you guys bring on issue number 3 or 4 or some resolution, I wouldn't be mad at it. But I don't think I'd personally seek it myself. This just piqued my interest enough to enjoy this read.
I liked the panel where the where Constantine kicked the child demon in the nuts.
Important things like that.
Yes.
Um, I feel like that kind of sums up this book. There's just it's serious and dark and gritty, but at the same time, there's this like this veneer of humor that sort of covers all of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes you forget, that yeah, he's dealing with demons and the devil and stuff like that because there's all this crazy shit happening around it. Um, but that makes it a good story. I like the character of Constantine. I feel like he's um, he's sort of a reluctant hero that always just, for whatever reason, there's a part of his character that makes him like, God damn it, I gotta step up. I gotta do this. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm gonna save the day or do what I need to do. Um, So yeah, it was good. I think the art is not the best in this book, uh, but the Black Label definitely is sort of a decent replacement for Vertigo. Um, I feel like these books are sort of the new Vertigo for DC. Um, I am kind of curious to see what happens. I want to go back to issue one. I'm assuming issue one shows where the demon stole Satan's wings. I kind of want to see how that happened. But yeah, like Emmanuel said, I don't know that I could read a full series. These Black Label books are a little bit longer, so I feel like the trade, if you had like a full 5 issues or whatever, would be like really a really long story. But if that's your jam, if that's these are the types of characters that you like, then um, it's definitely worth it. You get your money's worth for it.
What about the
Um,
art?
it's a little flat for me. I'm not a huge fan of the art. Um, there's something about it that's just not quite AAA. I don't know.
Amanda, you think the same way?
Um, right out the gate, I just want to make note of something that we mentioned
Oh, yeah.
off camera. The devil has no nipples. Just wanted to put that out there.
Okay.
Let it be
important.
said right here, January 3rd. It's the start of it. The devil has no nipples. All right. The art itself, I enjoyed. It wasn't eye-catching. It was just enough to make me interested and see what's going on. There's not a lot of detail. Don't get me wrong, it's drawn well, but it's not a lot of detail to make me really like the art. But I enjoyed it for what it was. It's not the great nor bad. It's just good.
I feel like it's missing. It's missing a certain consistency to it. So like my favorite panel where Constantine's kicking the child demon in the balls, he looks different than he does on the page before. I don't really know how to describe it or like how to explain what it is that I don't like about the art because it's serviceable. I mean it's not bad art in any regard. It just doesn't um, I don't know. There's something about it I just don't. I'm not wowed by it. I guess.
It reminds me of some Punisher runs, and it's probably I think Garth Ennis. A
Okay.
lot of Garth Ennis Punisher runs, which you guys probably don't read, reminds me very much of that look. It's gritty but not dirty, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the way. That's sort of how I see it. It's gritty, and there's dirt and grime, but it's actually cleaned up very well as far as on the page, right? So you see all the dirt and the grime, but you don't feel dirty, right? You don't feel, it stays there.
Yeah.
It's framed nicely, even in the hell scenes and all of this, which I've read horror books that just sort of oozed off the page. This sort of stays on the page, gives you all the detail, and it's safe to watch it from a distance without it touching you. That's sort of how I see it. It's
It's
all there, all
Could
the
that
evil, the
be?
murder, because I got to bring some murder now and again.
right.
All of that is there, but you feel enough removed. That's what I got. What were you getting ready? What were you saying,
Do
Emmanuel?
you think that that's a DC thing? That they did that on purpose because even though it's Black Label, it's still DC. So do you think that that was purposeful, or it just so happened to be this way?
It might be, and I like the fact that I don't feel like they held back.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't feel like they held back. That's a one worry about DC doing this type of thing. I'm worried that DC trying to be wholesome and Disney might hold back, right? But they don't hold back. And yet it's still a very clean and professional book. It's if when they say Black Label, let me say prestige horror, if that's a better way to put it.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I like
not
that.
not grimy horror. You know what I mean? Not grindhouse horror, right? Prestige
Yeah.
horror.
That's a good.
And
Yeah.
that's sort of what I got from that. So I got all the killing and the beheading and the kicking in the balls and having sex with the devil and no nipples and all of that I want from this type of book. But I didn't feel like it was on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I didn't feel, normally a lot of these type of books, not part of Black Label, you feel a little grime. You feel like, ugh. But I didn't feel. Oh, it was just kind of entertaining and seeing that all these things happening, and I could just roll along like I was in a safety bubble, right? And I kind of I can appreciate that, and it doesn't turn me off because some of these books, a lot of horror books, I won't keep reading because I just don't like how they make me feel,
Right.
right? But this doesn't do that to you. This says, and I'm gonna give you more. John Constantine is gonna have sex with 3 people, and none of them will be female, and none of them will be human, and he's gonna have sex with all of them at the same time, and he's gonna say something hella witty that you're just gonna laugh, and there'll be murder, and he's gonna call someone the C word somewhere in there, and all of that's gonna happen. Like, what's the guy on The Boys?
Oh,
Right? Like, I feel like him
Simon
and
Cowell.
right. I feel like him and Constantine are kind of cut from the same cloth. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Right? Just get the same. Not Simon Cowell, but the main
Yeah.
guy who.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I feel like they're cut from the same cloth.
Is it,
Only their power set is different.
So not Huey.
Not Huey. No, the guy who Huey looks up to, the guy who recruits Huey.
Right.
I feel like they're similar characters. Different stories, different power sets. But if you look at them, they got a British thing popping. You know what I
What
mean?
is his name?
They got a I don't give a. They will both call somebody the C word.
Is it Butch?
Yeah, Billy Butcher.
That's what.
Butcher.
Right.
Why the fuck did I get Simon Cowell?
Right.
Anyway.
So I like those kind of characters the same way I liked them in the series, and in fact, this sort of looks somewhat like that comic book series that Billy Butcher is in. Maybe the same artist, I don't know. But anyway, I enjoyed it for that reason. I think it's a read. What do you guys think?
I think it's worth a read. Yeah, for sure. It was still a fun ride. Yeah.
And I didn't see the ending coming. So thank you for that.
Yeah, good. I would hate to be the one to spoil it.
Yeah.
And then, it's enough. Like, if you are really interested, there's enough to say, well, damn, I got to at least see what happens on the next panel. Right?
Yeah.
If that interests you, I think they did. Here's what I think. I think it was well constructed. Right? It gave you all the horror elements. It gave you all the sexual and offensive elements. Right? Yeah. It cleaned it up and kept everything within the lines. So it wasn't grimy and dirty and bleeding off the page. And it gave you a deep, dark story with all the murder and everything you want. And if you like that, I promise you more next issue, and you believe that. Yeah. So if you do read this and like it, I feel like the next book is going to, in fact, it says to be concluded. So maybe you might want to wait until it all comes to fruition. Maybe there's only 3 issues. So I'm going to read the 3rd issue.
Okay. I totally missed that. I just read it as to be continued. So yeah, if it's 3 books, that's a standard size for a trade.
Yeah,
I could get into that.
So anyway, that's what I thought. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Yeah. So I'm constantly comparing Constantine in the books to the Keanu Reeves movie.
Yeah.
And the one thing that the Keanu Reeves movie is lacking is that Keanu Reeves is not British.
Yeah. That's a problem.
That it is. Like, everything else about that movie works except for that aspect of that character.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I think that's so integral to that character, because after you summon something and it goes to shite, to say bullocks after, there's nothing else you can say other than
and to say say the C word and the
exactly
the trisexuality of the real Constantine, right? Meaning try means, I'll try anyone, son. Whatever. Let's see what you're working with, right? And Keanu Reeves didn't do that. No. Keanu Reeves was not that grimy. Keanu Reeves didn't have any of that flavor. And Constantine has flavor.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think, while I enjoyed the Keanu Reeves Constantine movie as its own thing, I don't think it does justice to the richness of the character.
No.
And there's something to be said about a DC character, not unlike Lobo, who is just disgusting in almost every way, and yet they still thrive in the DC universe,
Yeah.
right? In theory, the DC universe characters like that aren't supposed to thrive. So
I
anyway,
submit to you the CW's Constantine.
hmm
Even though you might not agree with the CW storylines and plots and Legends of Tomorrow and all that, but he does phenomenal. Where he elevated to his own movie, I think that would be glorious because that character, like he is one of the shining pieces of Legends of Tomorrow of that series. Constantine. He's his mood is
for
right.
as far as
He's
CW,
ambiguous.
yes, I think he shines in CW. But if you give him
You don't
all
think he
three
can have his own?
dimensions in the movie, you're going to have to do things that make you not be able to watch the CW version anymore. I mean, let's be real, right?
Does he show up in just Legends of Tomorrow, or is he in all the Arrowverse stuff?
Okay, he showed up in a couple of issues of the Arrowverse. He showed up in Arrow once. Remember, he had his own series before Legends of Tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? And
Okay.
then so that the whole you can watch that whole season of that series. So that was the introduction to him. And I'm not even sure if it was on CW. It might have been somewhere else. But there is an entire series, and then they took that same actor and character and brought them into the CW. So he's mostly in Legends of Tomorrow, but he does show up in the Arrow series. Like, what happens if Supergirl needs a warlock? Where is he gonna go?
Right.
Right? In theory, Superman would go to Zatanna, right?
Yeah.
That's where you would think he would go. But if you need someone a little more darker, then that. So I like the
He did.
actor. I hope they give him a chance. But if he really if you put him in, I don't know if you guys watched the Titans live action series, which is very grimy and very dark. If you put him there, you can't put him back in the CW.
Okay.
He won't fit anymore. So just something to think about.
He did so well in his own series to
Yes.
where they said, and he had a lot of fanfare as well. People fell in love with him as Constantine.
Yeah.
So
For as a TV series, because you remember they had what was he in before Black Label? They had something else. What were they calling it?
was it?
Vertigo.
Anyway, when they put Constantine in the regular DC universe, he's more like the CW version,
Well, you got
Right.
it. Yeah, you got to tame him down a little bit.
right?
So,
But if you put him
yeah.
in Black Label and these other things, and if you put him in movies, you got to take some of that taming off. But once you do that and you put that out in the world in live action or cartoons, you can't go back,
Yeah.
right? Because you're going to be looking for him to do stuff that he did in the movies and not they won't let him do. And I think that's a reason why you keep removing him and putting him in Black Label comics, because Constantine type of thing can exist
It
in the
needs.
regular
Yeah, it needs that edge.
universe. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any final words on this Hellblazer Rise and Fall #2?
Nope.
All right, moving on. 30 years earlier. Right. So Hellblazer Rise and Fall was 2020. This came out in 1990. So 30 years ago, possibly to the day. New Warriors #1 came out. Brought some old heroes and some new heroes, all young heroes. What do you guys think?
I remember owning this book back in the day, and I remember picking up Night Thrasher #1 when he got his own book, which I think was a year or two after this. Holy shit, this is a 90s fucking book.
Yes. Yes, it is. In every way.
In every single way. I thought it was interesting. It was a nice nostalgia trip, I guess.
This is how I feel when you bring me these old ass books.
Right.
I figure I bring something that might be a little more fun sometimes. But anyway,
Yeah.
continue.
I thought it was interesting. It was kind of a cool superhero team origin story. I thought it was interesting the types of characters that they brought together. Like the book opens up with Night Thrasher holding Richard Rider over a ledge of a building, and he drops him, and his powers are awakened. He's like, "How did you know that was going to happen?" And like later on in the book, he's like, "Well, just to let you know, there was only a 35% chance that your powers were going to activate, but I'm willing to take that risk. And the only like his motivation is his parents died, so I'm gonna get even, right? Like I'm a vigilante character.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, the whole thing just it feels like that time. Just everything that they sort of put together for these characters. I thought it was really interesting. I had to go back and look up. Like I don't remember Namorita at all.
Really? She's canon too,
Yeah.
even before this.
So like I had to look her up. Um, I remember Vance from Guardians of the Galaxy, the original run.
Yes, this is supposedly the same character.
Okay, so I don't know how he ends up in the 30th century or whatever then.
Yeah, I
Um,
can explain that, but go ahead and
so
tell me
yeah,
your
just
story.
just certain things like that that sort of stuck out. The story itself I feel is kind of just traditional, I
It was a
guess.
day like any other.
Yeah, it's not really not anything spectacular. Like it's sort of, oh, here's the villain of the day, let's resolve it in the book, but still do the here's how our heroes got together, and we'll bring in the Avengers at the end and give their blessing so that this team can exist and move forward.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, overall, highly enjoyable. I will probably look for this in the crates and see how much it goes for, just to maybe pick it up and own it again.
Yeah. So Emmanuel, because some of these characters probably not alive, I figure you might find somebody in here you like.
I this is my first introduction
Hmm.
to the Night Thrasher,
Hmm.
so I don't know if he's still alive, but I want to see more about him. Is he dead?
Why would I?
He's
Yes.
dead. Is he? Okay.
So what I
All
like
right.
about Night Thrasher, and sorry for interrupting, is Night Thrasher is essentially an asshole young Batman,
Yeah, he
right?
is. Yeah,
He does everything that
Mhm.
Batman would do. He's just younger. He's got the same money, right? And he also has got his own armor and everything else, but he's still a youngster. He didn't go out into the world. He actually had trainers in house who sort of looked after him. So this is a Batman-esque character. By the way, there still is a Night Thrasher in the Marvel Universe. It's just not that same guy. So
right.
yes, Night Thrasher can still show up in the Marvel Universe. Don't worry, and it can show up in the movies and the TV. But you might be interested in this particular. His name is Dwayne, I think. This particular character. There is a whole series for that for you to check out.
Yeah.
Any other characters resonate with you, Emmanuel?
Not so much. Night
Okay.
Thrasher was the only one I that piqued my interest.
So did you like the book? What did you feel about it? What showed up for you?
All right. So when it comes to the book itself, I particularly like the phraseology. The At this time, I think I wrote down blue blazes, suffering shad, and
Yes.
copacetic.
Yes.
Those
Blue
three.
blazes. Yes.
I was born in '86, so I was around 4 when the '90s started to come into effect. I
Mhm.
don't think I've ever heard of suffering shad
No.
or blue blazes. Well, blue blazes maybe.
What in
A
blue
copacetic, yes,
blazes?
but only ironically. Yes, what in blue blazes? Like I've only heard it from older people
Great
saying it like
Caesar's
that.
ghost.
Yes, holy rusted metal, Batman. Like, that type of
Holy moly.
phraseology.
Mm-hmm.
Suffering shad.
Mm-hmm.
I It's the first time I've ever heard that. I had to write it down. I've added it to my lexicon. I'm going to be using that from now on. Suffering shad. So I'm going to sound like an old man now. This was interesting. I appreciate it for what it is. I wouldn't buy this myself. I wouldn't read this myself. It took one of you guys bringing this to allow me to read it because it's not something that I would have picked or dug up in the crates. So I was entertained. This is a passable read for me, meaning I would read it and pass it to someone else, like, hey, read this. But I wouldn't, if not given to me, I wouldn't go out and seek for it. The art itself is quintessential 90s. So you can't be let down there because there's a certain expectation of what to expect.
Yeah.
So I'd say it fulfilled all expectations, ticked all the boxes, and it was copacetic.
Copacetic? Copacetic? Anyway, so I picked it because I have an affinity for teen superhero group books, right?
Yeah.
Like I've always liked the Teen Titans. Back even before Wolfman, I got them. I liked them before then. Like all the sidekicks got together, and in Marvel, they don't really do teen hero groups well, or they haven't, right? When you think of that, none of them really existed or survived before there was New Warriors, right? So New Warriors was for me the quintessential teen team book, right? Like Vance Astro tried to join the Avengers right away because I want to be a great hero. And
Yeah.
like we ain't got no time for kids, right? Go cut your teeth on some villains or whatever. It's like Spider-Man. I remember Spider-Man tried to join the Fantastic Four, like in this first few issues. And
Right.
they were like, we ain't got time for this mess, right? And there was a what if, and when he actually joined, he became the Fantastic Five, which is another worth reading. Uh, um, so, like right now, and the New Warriors have come back with a different lineup before since then.
I don't. Are you talking about the new Warriors that they're going to release with all of the um,
Questionable heroes.
not questionable? I would say politically correct.
Yeah, I understand. My understanding is that they've scrapped that whole thing.
Yeah, it got so
Yeah,
much backlash.
yeah. But Miss Marvel has her own superhero team now, the Champions, and
Yeah.
that scratches that same itch. And everybody you love as a teen hero can be part of it, right? And they got more characters than some Avengers teams, right? I mean, they go everywhere. Miles Morales is a member, Nova is a member, all these other characters are members that you care about. So this shows that one thing DC did better than Marvel is they did teen teams, right? Better than anyone else, right? And I would go to Teen Titans against any teen team, right? Especially the new Teen Titans with Cyborg and everybody else. But I did like this sort of waking something. Say Marvel's finally doing a teenage team. Now the Vance Astro conversation you were having.
Yeah.
So Vance Astro in the Guardians of the Galaxy, not the one that's in the movies, but the previous iteration of them.
Yeah.
Vance Astro, Astrovic, grew up to become an astronaut. And he became an astronaut, and then his ship went somewhere that has never gone before. And due to
Okay.
that, he was kept in suspended animation. So he was awakened in a future, the year 3000 or whatever,
Yeah.
in which he sort of no longer existed. And he was able to actually get Captain America's shield. And sort of the process sort of gave in him or woke in him telekinetic powers. But something happened and he came back into the past, our present, and he saw his previous self and it activated the telekinetic powers early in his previous self. So
Okay.
that's sort of how he became Marvel Boy or whatever his version of the character is.
Yeah.
You know, Jean Grey without the mind control or whatever. Bloody Nose Boy, if you prefer. But that's how he became. And so Captain America knew of his future self, but obviously you're a bit younger, dude. Like,
Yeah.
so that was the issue with the Avengers. You want to register everybody, but you don't want to train these young characters. You want to wait till they get seasoned enough to join. What was you supposed to do with them? What are they supposed to do in the meantime? Right? And so that's always another issue where DC will let anybody get a sidekick, right? If Wonder Woman want a Wonder Girl, we got you. Superman want a Superboy, we got you. Batman, how many Roberts you want? You can renew. After you kill a few, we'll give you some more, right? Anybody can have a sidekick and a teen superhero. Green Arrow did it, right? And it has like 3 or 4 sidekicks also. Anybody. You don't even have to have powers to get a sidekick and a teen hero, right? And because these other characters, everybody's sort of ultimately a member of Justice League or something else, these teen characters get together, right? Because while the big daddies or big mommies are out there planning everything, they can sit and talk about what it's like to be, and let's go do our own thing and let's have a clubhouse, right? And we all like to fight crime. We have this it's like comic book readers getting together, right? We all do this and we all love it. Marvel never did that. Marvel really fails when it comes to that. And that is the world that they've written. It's still that same way. DC makes that work.
Yeah, I guess the only counterpoint to that is I would say the X Men.
Yeah, but they're not even really part of Marvel. Let's just be real. Except for in the last 20 years, the last 30 years, X-Men had nothing to do with the Marvel universe.
Well, you can't just be any regular teen hero either. You got to be a mutant.
Yeah,
So
right. So it's almost. I always felt like the X-Men were Marvel. Were
their
in a
own
different
separate.
Marvel
Yeah,
universe. The Marvel universe, but a different one than everybody else.
yeah,
Right? Because they would go, they would fight
See
for
that.
humanity, and the Avengers would never show up.
right.
Right? I'm like, then what planet are we on?
Yeah,
Thor never shows up, right? They fight Superman level people. They fight for the planet. They fight for humanity's enslavement or against it, and no Avengers show up. So I feel like Marvel is only just now in the last 10, 20 years trying to integrate them in.
yeah.
But if you look at the Marvel movies and the Marvel movie universe, where do teen superheroes show up? Is Miss Marvel going to be the first one? Or Miles Morales? Are they
Yeah.
ever going to team up?
I don't know. We'll see.
Right? Like the world that they've written doesn't really allow for it. But anyway, that's my thought. So you guys say read, buy, or pass. What's your take?
It's an interesting part of history for sure.
So you say read?
I say it's worth a read. I also want to point out the Night Thrasher's skateboard that shows up in 2 panels, and there's no mention of it. And
Oh, because it's on his back. So when he's not using it, it magnetically sticks to his back. It's like a batarang. You pull it out when you need it. But it's still there. It's just you're never seeing his back.
no, it's just funny that that's the only time it shows up, and that's it.
Yeah, when he needs it. Right? It's like you can't have batarangs if you don't need them. Why even pull them out?
Yeah,
So I liked these characters. I liked the story was not necessarily the greatest, but I liked these 7 characters. I cared about them, right? I cared about more than one of them, right? I even cared about evil ass black teen Batman, right? So that worked for me. And seeing them get together, and I've probably read every one of these issues.
okay.
So I thought it would be something worth sharing if you care to know more about how they work together. I even like Speedball, the bouncing dude,
I think
right? He was
yeah.
actually one of my favorites. And he turned evil at some point. And anyway, if you care, this was the New Warriors. Moving on, Emmanuel, what do you got for us today?
I
By the
have
way,
Sex
Emmanuel,
Criminals.
I'm sorry, Emmanuel, buy, read, or pass on New Warriors.
Oh, I would say that it is a read minus.
Good enough. Sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
All right, you're good. All right. So, Sex Criminals, issue number 1 by Image Comics. Imagine a world where you yourself, you engage in amorous sexual activity, but you go into like this mindscape or this bodyscape where everything slows down. You see flashing lights. When you reach that climax, that orgasmic time, and you're thinking, oh, this is true for everybody. Maybe not. You find out as you grow older and have more sexual encounters that not everyone shares that same experience with you. Yes, it's pleasurable to them, but no one goes where you go and has that same euphoric feeling, except for one other person, where time literally stops and slows down, and you hear rumbling, and you can do things in this sexscape instead of mindscape. Sexscape, where you can perform actions, you can become a criminal, and since it's brought upon by sex, why not call that a sex criminal? Therein lies the plot of this issue. What do you guys think?
He's gonna hand it off to me first.
Unless you want me to go first.
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
So the interesting thing about this book is, if you know comic writers, Matt Fraction's name comes up quite a bit. He's a pretty good writer. I'd say his run on Hawkman or Hawkeye is probably one of the most notable. Um, this book is interesting in a few different regards. The powers that it introduces are unique, right? Because of, as Emmanuel was talking about, when the main character orgasms, she goes into a state of suspended time, I guess. And then she meets another character who has the same ability, and that's sort of where this takes off. The main character Susie looks a lot like Matt Fraction's real life wife, Kelly Sue DeConnick, who's also a writer, a comic writer, and Craig kind of looks like Matt Fraction. So I don't know if that was intentional. I'm assuming it was, that the characters are sort of based on him and his wife, and they are sex criminals, I guess. But yeah, so I'm not sure like how personal this book is for him, but I know that this is probably one of his, other than his Hawkeye run, probably one of his more famous books. I think it's interesting. It's very Image in the fact that the powers are sort of unique and fall within this weird realm. Um, Overall, I thought it was interesting. I'm not a huge fan of the art. I don't like the fact that the panels don't have any border on them. It was very distracting for me, and it has like this very modern feel to the way that it's laid out. Um, it does service the story. It's very colorful. I do like that aspect of it. Um, I'm trying to think of what else I can. I'm scrolling through and I'm trying to think about what else I can talk about. There's the humor in the book is good, and I think that it sort of portrays the main character as a little girl very different than the way that other books might portray a little girl. So it gives her more dimension than what a normal book would do, I guess. And so that's also good. Russ, what are your thoughts?
Wow, I was waiting for the enthusiasm and you wasn't giving it to me. Okay, so there's nothing about this book that says criminals until the very last panel. So sex criminals, my ass. Maybe the rest of the book, the rest of the series are, but there's nothing criminal about this until the very last panel, and then it's only criminal possibility, right? So let's start what this book is really about. I can't tell you what the series is really about because I haven't read anything. But the book is about a girl, a pre-pubescent girl, right? Who discovers sex, and nobody friggin' helps her. No one helps her understand it. People just do the party line and tell them what they tell them, but she never walks away no understanding. And then she has her first sexual experience in the tub, puberty, as it were, and something happens that, where we know it is strange, she just thinks this is just how sex works. And that's why people want to have it so much. She has no knowledge or understanding and no one to talk to. And imagine how, and I'm not a woman, never been a girl. So if no one told me that I was supposed to bleed and it happened, I'd be horrified.
Yeah.
Right. And to have no one to talk to would be the scariest thing. And to not even have an idea that what's happening to me is not normal would be terrifying for days, weeks, months, possibly years. This is traumatizing, even if there was no superpower in it, right? This is a traumatizing story of a woman trying to find a girl trying to find out about sex. She goes to the hoes in the, in the, at their middle school. She goes to everybody she can feel to go to. And she really likes it, by the way. She really friggin' enjoys it. Right? And goes to live her life and try to understand it. And she has sex with a lot of people. right? In this book, you don't see all of them, but you see like a mashup page of 20 people or whatever people she's had sex with for whatever different reasons she wanted to try it. And in each time she gets something, something activates, and it's shown colorfully as if something dimensional or some kind of view of the world is happening. It doesn't explain what's happening anywhere in words. You just see, right? So, and she learns. There's one girl. There's one scene where she goes to the hoe that apparently caught herpes or something, and she's showing him all these different positions by drawing them on the wall.
Yeah.
Some of them I have never seen. Right? I'm just going to say that and move on. All right. Some of them I don't ever want to see in real life. Right. So this is a book about the girl learning about sexuality in the most jacked up friggin' way, which may be a reality in how real young girls actually experience it. I don't know. Right. I really would need a woman in our group to really tell me if there's some real parallels here. But it's a jacked up situation. The only good thing about it is it's not hurting her physically.
Yeah.
Right. It actually gives her joy. But her mind is jacked up because of this. And she goes through life trying to figure out, and she finds still, as most people do, you grow up in Compton, you adapt. Then you grow up and people don't really know you're crazy. They just sort of deal with you, right? And she goes in and she's just having sex like she likes to have it. And then in the last few pages of the book, she has sex with someone that it's happening for them too.
Yeah.
And you see that, and you still don't get explained what that means. Nowhere in this book do you really get explained what that means, other than the last page. The guy who's apparently maybe he knows what to do with this, but a girl didn't think of it, says, "Don't freak out, stick to the plan, it'll be okay." And the next panel, they have guns, and that's it. So the sex to criminals part takes place in a future book. But this one book is the story of a girl and her sexuality from prepubescent till now. And I found that story to be interesting. I found that story to be somewhat compelling. I didn't get bored going through this book. I didn't know where it was going to go, and it didn't get in any criminal thing.
No.
But as these things were revealed to the girl, they were revealed to me, and I had some empathy with some shit, with stuff she's going through. If I was 10 and somebody started drawing these sexual positions on the wall, and I had questions and I don't understand, all of that I found this to be a very interesting story. Right? I don't know if the book or the series is interesting, but I found it to be very compelling. I would even say that this might be a buy. I'm giving it a buy minus. That's my take. You have anything else to add? See, I had some enthusiasm there, Matt. See that? Catch that?
I would say this is a read for me.
Okay.
It was interesting. I did enjoy it. I don't know that I would buy this and have this in my collection.
I would. I'd show it to somebody to freak them out. Like, this is a thing that happens in comics, and this is just the first issue, right? Definitely would buy it, and definitely would show it to someone who doesn't care about superheroes at all.
Right.
Yeah. I might see if
Or
I can
maybe doesn't even care for superheroes.
Yeah, I might see if I can get my wife to read this. She might like this.
Right. And I would be interested to see her take about anything that's glaringly can't possibly really happen. What's really far, other than the superpowers, is there anything else far-fetched about this? I'd be interested to know that from a woman's perspective. So I would like to hear if she has some say in that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the scene where she's in the bathroom, she's gone to the school hoe, and she's like, "I need to learn about sex. Please tell me," or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I kind of feel like that was my experience. You know what I mean? Like other peers that I had, nobody really knew what the fuck they were talking about, but we'd make up this shit, and be like, well, this is absolutely what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's pretty true to life. That's real. You know what I mean? It's extrapolated from what real life is, but so I don't know. It's pretty good. It's a good
Yeah,
read.
this being completely outside of my scope of experience, I myself have never had a euphoric experience like that where time stopped and um, the atmosphere was aglow. But I mean, who knows? So this was very imaginative to come to a story, no pun intended, come to a story that has this sort of environment, these powers, this plot was different and vastly different than anything I've read so far. So this was a unique take on puberty, and I'm glad you guys at least were entertained.
Yeah, I was always going to read this book. It was always on my radar. It's just other things came first. So thank you for pushing it forward.
Indeed. All right.
All right. So the last pick of the day, Star Trek versus Transformers, IDWP or IDW issue. And again, 2018, this is issue number 1. If you are familiar with Star Trek, this is not the Next Generation. This is one that came before. It's Captain Kirk,
The original
Lieutenant
series.
Spock. Exactly. This cast goes and meets the Transformers, the Decepticons, and Autobots. Chaos ensues. What do you guys think?
I like that it is the cartoon versions of both, right?
Yes.
It has a very Saturday morning feel to it. Um, I think that it's interesting that the crew of the Enterprise does not go through any type of space anomaly to get to this planet where Transformers exist, so therefore they exist in the same universe.
Yes.
Um, this is peanut butter and chocolate. This is peanut butter and jelly. This is um, name any two things that you like, throw them together. IDW does that really well. They did it really well with Back to the Future and Transformers. Um, they do it really well here. All of the dialogue is what you would expect the characters to say. There are moments reading this where I have a laugh track that goes off in my head while I'm sort of going along this adventure. Um, I think there's one line
Meets
that,
the eye.
yeah, exactly. There's one line that Spock says where he's like, Captain, I believe this is more than meets the eye, right? Like, there's stuff like that throughout this entire book. It's exactly what you expect from an IDW crossover that's done in this style. Uh, this I didn't even know this existed. I'm gonna go out and try to find it and buy it. Um, I don't know what else there is to say about it. It's the style, the artwork is done exceptionally well. I feel like they nail exactly the way that you expect the cartoon to translate to the page. Like all the characters look the way that they should. Um, yeah, it's done. It's done exceptionally well, and there's a lot of love and care that went into it for sure.
Okay. So I very much like that they took the animated. It almost looks like they took original cells from the original animated series and used them here.
Yeah,
It's so uncannily exactly like so well done, so well copied. I like that they use the animated series because a lot of people don't have a hand in that universe in Star Trek, especially the cat girl who goes out on missions is only existed in the animated series that I know of.
right.
So that also means that Captain Kirk is not going to have sex with anybody because it's the animated series version. So because seeing him have sex with an Autobot might be problematic. I liked there were unique characters that were created for this, like the evil Megatron woman bot that was, saying I should keep him as a pet, something that I'd never seen her before in anything before. Spare this one. He's cute. I'll keep him as a pet
Yeah.
because even Kirk is still pimping. Even when it comes to Decepticons, he's still Kirk, right? And I like that. And there's even when the Autobots finally show up, there's a unique Autobot that I've never seen before. So they created some unique characters for this. That part I liked. I was also interesting to see how well the handheld phasers did against Autobot armor, right? Like one
Yeah,
shoot from the phaser really friggin' hurt Optimus
Optimus.
Prime,
Yeah,
right? I'm like, how powerful are these handheld things here, right? Because it looks like they have the firepower of an actual Decepticon in their hands. And that's not even counting actual laser rifles, right? This is just the regular old pew pew Star Trek guns, right? So I thought that was interesting. This is definitely a labor of love. This definitely embodies a lot of what you liked about what I liked about the original Star Trek animated series and the original Transformers animated series. It's not too deep where it gets too much mess with your head. It's not time travel. It's just people showing up that you know, and this is what happens when they get together, right? So I even like that Star Trek guy on the bridge. I don't know what kind of race he is. Apparently, he has 3 arms. He's the one who's still on the bridge when the Kirk goes down with the away team. He only exists in the animated series.
yeah.
That meant something to me. That meant that you went and you really tried to go deep with this. And IDW tends to always deliver. I felt the colors were a little too light, bright, maybe, but maybe that's normal Saturday morning fare. There's no darkness here,
No,
right?
yeah.
There's no darkness. There's no shadows. I mean, there's no real darkness here. This is all bright Saturday morning fare, and maybe that's a good thing. I enjoyed the book. It's worth a read. I probably won't read another issue, but if the whatever the collected version of this shows up, I will probably read that. So if I see the graphic novel of Star Trek versus Transformers in the bin, I'll put it in my list to buy.
Damn it,
Nice.
Jim. I'm a doctor,
I,
not a mechanic.
yes. That encapsulates Bones so much. I love
Mm-hmm.
that.
I
All
believe
right.
there's
What you
more
guys
that
think?
meets the
So,
eye here. Yeah, I consider it. It's a read, definitely.
Yeah, this is a buy for me. I'll go look for
Okay.
it and see if I can find it for sure. Yeah.
all right.
All right. Well, that does it for the 6 issues. We do have a um, article in the show notes that we can talk about, though. Um, so let's go ahead and get into that. I'm gonna see if I can pull in an image, maybe show everybody that's watching what it is that we're talking about if you haven't already seen it. Russ, you want to go ahead and
Yeah, so Spider-Man is getting a new costume. It's a high-tech costume. Well, I don't know how high-tech, but it's some technology involved. Now, for me, there's really only been 2 costumes that I care about Spider-Man. That is the original Spider-Man costume with the webbing under the arms. Because if the webbing isn't under the arms, you just faking the funk. That's not the webbing's supposed to be under the arms. That's the real Spider-Man. And the second one is the Venom costume, the back in black costume. Those are, and I believe me, I can list 5, 6 more different costumes he's worn, but those are the 2 that stick. So it's interesting to see what you guys think of it, and do you think this is something that can stick?
no, it's not something that's gonna stick.
Ooh,
But I love the design of it, and I love how pissed off people are about this on the internet. I really like the electric blue Superman, so
mm-hmm.
I'm all for it. I like so one of my favorite aspects of the PlayStation Superman or Spider-Man games was the all the different costumes that you could put him in. It didn't change the story, it didn't change the gameplay or anything like that, but just having like all the different looks for Spider-Man, I thought was really cool. This is going to be some fantastic DLC for Spider-Man, Insomniac Spider-Man Ultimate Edition when they release it. Yeah, I'm all for it. I think it's going to be great.
I
I
really
agree.
like the one of my favorites is the green and black stealth suit Spider-Man. That one changes or turns him invisible, and as well as being very very silent. So he can run. You won't hear the pitter patter of his footsteps. Spider-Man is already pretty stealthy as is, but this has like a noise canceling aspect to him as well. The green and black suit. That's one of my favorites. This is awful looking. It does not look appealing. It's not aesthetically pleasing. It's just way too bright, too many colors. I could see if maybe he were doing it for a specific mission, going out into space, or it serves some other function other than, yeah, I'm just changing my look. It's not serving any unique purpose. I'm really interested in the storyline behind the suit, if it's just a regular suit or if it's actually serving for a mission.
Um,
S-
there
I,
are. Go ahead.
I guess it's supposed to aid him in his fight against Kingpin. So I guess at least that's part of the previews for it. Following the traumatic events of Sin's Rising, Peter Parker will wear this new suit for his face-off against Kingpin in the new arc of writer Nick Spencer's hit run. Um, so yes, I
So
think it does have a story reason.
Hmm.
So this reminds me of the time, if you remember, when Spider-Man was accused of murder and he couldn't go around as Spider-Man anymore. So he invented four different costume identities, right? In his own identity crisis, right? And one of them was called, and each one of them took advantage of Spider-Man's sort of unique personality and capabilities. One of them was called Ricochet,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
One of them was called, there's four different ones. One was a high tech suit, whatever. And then later, those characters, the slingers, I think there was the name of it. So if you look up Spider Man slingers, I'm giving you a second. Sorry for getting on the internet in the middle of a podcast. Uh, Slingers costumes. There was a book called Slingers, and there were four different characters that he created, four different personalities that he went actually in the same day. He would change the different versions of these characters to sort of elude the people that were after him, but still be able to help people, right? And the idea, one of them was loved by everybody. I think it was called Prodigy. One of them
yeah,
was more high tech suit. One of them was Ricochet. And then later, these four different characters were given these different suits once Spider-Man abandoned them, and they became their own characters. They're real people or real characters that put on these suits.
yeah.
So that reminded me. This made me think of maybe the suit won't go away. Maybe somewhere else later on, 10 years from now, Spider-Man will be attacked by somebody wearing the same suit, and be like, "What the heck is going on? I created the suit. How are you in it?" So anyway, that's my thought about that. But
Could
no,
I,
it won't last.
could always bring back. Well, does Ben Riley have his own book still? Didn't they give him a sensational
They did,
Spider-Man
and he
book
was
or something?
crazy for a while. I don't
Yeah,
think it lasted. I think he's still around,
Yeah,
but I don't know where he is.
isn't
Ever
he in
since they,
Texas or something?
ever
I
since
don't
they
know.
decided to make him not the real Spider-Man, like they were going to make him the real, he was the real Spider-Man all along,
Right.
and then they took that away because people complained. He went basically to the garbage bin after that. They just really bring him up when they need somebody.
Yeah.
But it was the opportunity for the real Peter Parker, Mary Jane, to go off and live and have a life while there was still an actual Spider-Man in the world. And I thought that would have been great. But people complain, just like they're going to complain about this particular costume, and they're going to want to go back to the status quo. Shame on them.
Yeah, it's good for a couple of issues. I'm curious if it's going to last beyond 61 and 62, or if that's the whole point. Get people invested in this new story arc, get
Or
them back
maybe
in the.
they keep it going on for another year to piss people off so they'll buy more books.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm definitely going to buy this just to have it. Um, especially, I mean, the cover looks cool, I think, for both issues. So,
All right.
all right. Any final thoughts on blue, white, neon orange Spider Man?
Nope. I just, I don't, Peter Parker, I don't like, just like I don't like Batman. So who cares?
All right. So, on that note, we'll go ahead and sign off for the week. It's been wonderful, gentlemen. It's been another good Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Come again, bring a friend.
Beautifully.
Until next time.
Blue blazes. Form acidic secretion.